am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed, just like the woman on the other mic. She's been in here on a Friday a few times before, but, our paths kind of collided again with the whole cancer thing. And I think we talked about it a little bit the last time she was on, but we're going to talk about it more in depth when it comes to how to eat and what to eat. She is a registered dietitian. No, she doesn't follow what the normal registered dietitians actually follow out there. This woman's got her own thoughts. And I love a person like that. Like I said, she's been on before and she's here again. Registered dietitian, Michelle Hurn. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, I saw something you wrote the other day and you were talking about, cancer and the whole thing, and your wife is going through it. And, I'm kind of going through the same thing and I talked about this on a podcast. This podcast might actually come out before that podcast because I'm going through chemo. I'm several shows ahead. I'm trying to stay ahead for obvious reasons. But I had a thing in my own treatment that just came up out of nowhere. And it's one of those you have to advocate for yourself. Right. And like I said, I told the story on a different podcast. I'll tell you quickly. I'll give you the roundabout. As I told you off the air, I have the same cancer I had 17 years ago. They told me it would come back in 5. I made it 17. Great. I'm doing great. I'm beating the odds. Well, I had to go back in and go back on chemo again several weeks ago. And I'm going through all that now. But they started giving me other drugs that they did not give me 17 years ago, prophylactically. Right? One was an antiviral, one was an antibiotic. And I didn't look at first. I went, okay, they just want me to finish these bottles of this and I'll be done. I didn't realize that they wanted me to be on this shit for 6 months. Can you imagine being on an antibiotic for 6? I would have no stomach left. Right? Like it would just wear me out. And well, within several days of being on these 2 drugs, my face started turning beet red. And then I had raised bumps all over my neck and face. And then it started on my chest. And before long, my entire body was covered in hives. Just, I looked like an alien. I had a reaction to this. So, I called the nurse, said, hey, because you can call the doctor's nurse whenever you want.
Sure.
I'm outpatient. And I said, look, I'm having this reaction. And she goes, well, you're coming in for blood work today. We'll give you something to counteract that. Now I'm pissed because I'm taking drugs I didn't take the last time when I was cured. Of course, the actual chemo was exactly the same chemo, right? But I'm taking these drugs from what I can tell prophylactically, and the nurse told me that's exactly what was going on. Okay. So I get to the hospital, I give my blood, and they sent me over to the pharmacy, and now I'm taking a steroid. Right? They're giving me, God, what's the name of it? The one everyone takes, a prednisone.
Yeah.
They give me the prednisone. They tell me to take 6 of them at the pharmacy. Take 6 of these right now. I'm blown up. You should see me. I look like a blowfish. I take 6 of them. Pain doesn't really go away or anything, but now 3 o'clock in the morning when I should be getting some good sleep because, you need to rest as much. I'm bouncing off the walls. I'm in a dark room staring up. I'm losing my mind. I'm on this stuff for 2 days, 3 days, and it's getting a little better. The prednisone's helping, but it's bothering the crap out of me that I'm taking prophylactic drugs that I didn't need. And now I'm taking a drug to counteract with the prophylactics. Yeah, it's like I'm taking. They caused the problem and said, "Okay, let's go fix the problem." I finally called.
Sounds, sounds like a metaphor for our healthcare system, right?
I mean, I'm sitting there going, literally, what the fuck, right?
Mhm.
So I called Sam. I'm very nice to these people. I mean, they're saving my life, for God's
Mhm.
sake. I said, Sam, listen, I I noticed that you guys want me on this stuff for 6 months. I'm not making it a whole week here. And I said, besides, last time I had the same chemo, I get it. I was a lot younger. I was in my early 40s. But come on, what are we doing here? And she goes, well, I'm looking at your blood that you gave just the other day, and your neutrophils look great, and your white blood cell count's coming up a little bit. Let me talk to the doctor about taking you off of all of it. Because I said to her, I said, look, I'm not sitting here eating pizzas and ice cream and Oreos. I'm
Mhm.
eating on point. I said, before this flame up came, I was getting my spinner for an hour to 90 minutes a day. Most people who are healthy are not doing that,
True.
right? I was getting on my rowing machine for an hour to hour and 15 minutes on days when I wasn't on my spinner. I said, okay, I'm not the normal cancer patient. Why are you treating me like someone who is metabolically broken that will die in 3 days? I'm exercising here. There's got to be something going on. As soon as I made any stink about it, the doctor looked at my blood numbers, pulled me off of all of the medication, and I said, okay, now what about the medication for the medication? Can I go off of that? So the doctor and the pharmacist got together and said, yeah, you could come off of the steroid too, cold turkey, because it had only been 3 days. It wasn't long term. But can you imagine if I had not advocated for myself? Can you imagine?
I can. 'Cause
I, I,
I truly can.
so you guys, your wife, let me say it correctly, Corene.
Corene, yes.
Corene is going through cancer, and you guys have been pretty open about it online. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so, it was a shock. We're both I am just 1 month older than she is. We both turned 40 last year. So she's a scientist, she's a director of pathology at a clinic where we live. And so they do just like lunch and learns. They have other providers come in and talk during meetings, and they had an oncologist come in and talk about, breast cancer screening, and she just came home and said like, "Hey, we should get mammograms. We're 40." And I was just like, oh my God, we're busy. We're doing all this stuff. Like, I don't have time for that. And she's like, come on, it's covered by insurance. We should do this. And so I was like, fine. So, she made an appointment. I made an appointment. Mine was fine. And hers, they actually called her back and said, hey, we think we found something. But they told both of us, like, they tell you on your first screening, like, hey, since it's your first screening, it's not uncommon to find something. We'll rescreen it or, do a biopsy, and it generally comes back negative. So when she told me that they found, or they saw something, I wasn't overly concerned. I was like, oh yeah, that sucks. You have to go back in one more time. But then, yeah, I'll never forget. I got home from work and I was, just playing with our German Shepherd, and she walked over to me and said, yeah, they called back. I have cancer. And as
Oof.
you know, that flips your world upside down, like
Yeah,
just those words. Because we know statistically significantly more people die of heart disease than cancer. But there's all these images that come to mind, obviously radiation, chemotherapy. And as you alluded to, the navigating the system is, I honestly do not know how people who don't have some of the knowledge and expertise that we have navigate this. Because it isn't just like, okay, this is your diagnosis, you're going to see your provider, this is what we're going to do. You have to see so many different people. And depending on what kind of cancer you have and how aggressive it is, it could be a week we get you in, it could be months, and it's terrifying.
yeah,
So I'm so grateful. Like you said, advocating for yourself. We immediately knew what to do from a nutrition standpoint. Like there's a lot with cancer that is not in your control. And we know that there are a lot of things that cause cancer. It's multifactorial. You can eat quote unquote perfectly. And unfortunately, we're exposed to a lot of pesticides and stress in our water and our food system. There's so many different things. So, what exactly caused it? I don't know. And I didn't care. It's like, we want to get this out of your body, and we want to, hopefully see that it's not spread, and make sure we're going to be as proactive in the future. But yeah, it was hard, because we immediately were able to get an appointment with an oncologist the next day. It was at her clinic, so they fast tracked us. But from a conference that I had been to, I knew, when I wrote my book, I didn't include a chapter on cancer and ketogenic diets, because that was just out of my area of expertise.
Right.
But I tell you, I caught up real fast. I've read all the research now, and honestly, just like other things, it's hard not to become a little angry at our current healthcare system, because it's not like we just have case studies and some anecdotal reports like, oh, this person ate low carb and they did better. It's like, no, we have lots of clinical trials. Dr.
Yeah,
Thomas Seifert published
yeah, so
over 100.
Seifert. Yeah, he was on the show. Seifert was on the show just 2 or 3 weeks ago for like the second or third time,
Yeah.
and we could go all the way back to Otto Warburg, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's this is not new material.
Yes. Oh, and
And
even
that's
the
the
American
crazy part.
Cancer Society, even on there, you get on their webpage, they say, like, this won't make you want to throw a bottle across the room. It literally says, cancer cells run glycolysis at 10 to 15 times the rate of normal cells. Like, 6-year-old niece could read that and be like, oh, yes, that's faster glycolysis, 10 to 15 times, meaning they utilize glucose and
Right.
other substrates that can make glucose. But then the next sentence, comma, and many people have erroneously believed that glucose and carbohydrates feed cancer cells. It's like,
Erroneously.
yeah,
And by the way, I was telling you off the air just a few minutes ago that my doctor in LA, who was one of these research scientists, was one of the people going, "Yeah, most cancers, not all cancers, but most are closed cells, and they don't feed on the oxygen outside of your body, so they have to get oxygen from somewhere, and they get that oxygen because a carbohydrate is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? So it's getting the oxygen that's being carried into the cell from sugar. So the more sugar you can keep out of the cell, the more you're not going to get, folks, we're not talking about a cure here.
no.
You're not going to cure cancer. As a matter of fact, I was getting a little angry again. I always get angry about this. I'm grateful and angry at the same time, because you were just saying, she got it, you did, and you guys eat on point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been eating and exercising my life away, right? I do not look like a normal 61-year-old guy when I take my shirt off. I don't, right? I have a younger brother who is in the 300, he's my height, he's in the 320-pound range. I have an older brother. He and my older brother, they eat like raccoons who just got high. They will eat,
I'm going to use that statement at some point.
you know, but that's what they're like. They're like high raccoons. They'll eat junk food on top of junk food. I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that's got the mutated gene that causes leukemia. My other brother, who doesn't eat the healthiest diet, but my fourth brother, my third brother, there's four of us. He eats pretty close to the way I eat. He eats pretty sophisticated diet. He's the other one with cancer. So the two who eat like drunken raccoons, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
The two that pretty much, ride bikes and do this and do that, that's it. We both have cancer, different kinds of cancers, but there is no rhyme or reason. But we do know that after you get it, the way you act and the way you treat it it's vastly different. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes, and that would be my message and my advocacy. And like I said, I caught up real fast on nutrition and cancer, because obviously, the person that I love more than anything in the world has this terrifying diagnosis. So I wanted to know everything, like, what can we do in our power? And this is where, it's easy to get angry at the healthcare system, right? Because kind of like they treated you. We saw between doctors, nurses, surgeon, all 32 different humans, 32 different people throughout this whole process. One person said anything about nutrition, and her advice was, don't eat any animal fat. That's horrific. We have such good studies. Like, there is 3 or 4 published specifically on breast cancer. Corene had breast cancer, that if, following a ketogenic diet, and she immediately went on a very specific, because when when I'm doing consults for people, if they're just trying to do weight loss or, reverse type 2 diabetes, especially if they're just starting, I'm not, I don't necessarily have them track ketones. You don't have to be in nutritional ketosis. We're just trying to
Right.
change behaviors, right? But for something like this, for a cancer diagnosis, being strict ketogenic is very important. You want to be in ketosis because one, that puts your body, a ketogenic state is very anti-inflammatory. It makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for cancers to grow. So you're literally stunting the growth. And they showed they got much, much better margins when they removed tumor cells. And so she immediately went on, it was like a very low 13 to 1400 calorie restricted therapeutic ketogenic diet, measuring ketones every day. And honestly, she had a better attitude than I think I would have. Like, there was no complaining. There was no poor me. It was just like, let's do it. This is what we're doing, you
Okay.
know?
So, all right. I've seen Corene because I love your videos.
Thank you.
She's a very lean, very fit woman. Can we agree on that to begin with?
Yeah, not quite as lean as me. She would tell you that.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah, she's not overweight.
you're a little
Yeah,
messed up
not
in the
overweight.
head. Yeah, you're a little messed up in the head. She's normal, but
Yeah,
she's a
exactly. She's
lean,
not running like
healthy.
a crazy person like me.
Right. She's a lean, healthy woman.
Yes.
Right. How close to eating low carb was she? Not particularly ketogenic, but
Mhm.
how close to low carb was she before she decided to go ketogenic?
Gosh, since 2019, like since I started, she started relatively quickly after that. And, maybe 1 or 2 days a year it would be an exception, but I would say 99% of the time she's eating 50 grams of carbs or less. So she was a
Well,
low carb and
all right. So, what was her diet the day before she went total ketogenic? What did it look like?
oh goodness.
Because
Yeah,
that's what the audience wants to know.
yeah, no, she was, I mean, we mostly carnivore, doing like say in the morning would do like bacon. She makes long fermented sourdough bread, so might do like a small thing of sourdough with some butter. Lunch would be like chicken and some vegetables, and dinner was pretty similar, having meat, vegetables, a little bit heavier. We both kind of leaned heavier into protein versus fat. And so that was something that switched, because that's another thing that sometimes people get really excited, like, okay, I'm going to do an all carnivore diet. I have a cancer diagnosis where we know that too much protein. This is the first time that she had to weigh and measure protein. We actually had to restrict protein, and obviously it's not like a very, very small amount, but you couldn't have unlimited amounts of protein because that can, go through gluconeogenesis to become glucose as well.
Right. And so, how did that change afterwards? I mean, you just mentioned she's measuring
Yep.
and whatever. Are we talking more coconut oil? What is she supplementing?
Yeah.
Olive oil? What is she doing? Because the oils are the quickest and easiest way to get the fats in. Of course, butter is another
Yeah.
great one. So, what were you guys doing?
Yeah, so breakfast was immediately gone. She went to more of like the bulletproof type coffee, which was just coffee with MCT oil and butter blended. And that was the only butter was the only kind of quote unquote dairy thing she did because she had an estrogen positive cancer. And there was some research that, dairy can potentially be
Sure,
problematic.
sure.
And so, unfortunately, it's like, oh crap, I can't even have cheese. She had one day that had a little meltdown, but other than that, like I said, really good attitude. So no breakfast other than like the coffee and the MCT. And then lunch, she would have just kind of like a salad with, pretty heavy on like the avocados, olive oil. And dinner, once again, we would do a smaller meat portion. She ate more vegetables than we did before. We kind of were more like meat focused. And because once again, she was trying to get a little less protein, less calories, and just higher fat. So, yeah, really leaning heavily into the butter, olive oil, and in the morning doing some of the MCT.
It's funny. I, with my own thing here, I went higher, more, I'm eating coconut oil like there's no tomorrow, drinking olive oil, like drinking fish oil like there's no tomorrow. I just started calling myself a diesel engine. I'm just running on oil. And, but I said to Serena, I said, start buying more broccoli because I need to eat more broccoli and cauliflower. And she was like, what are your thoughts on that? I was like, well, they have me on all these drugs, and I'm sure it's messing up my gut in some way, shape, or form. And this is a good way to keep good bacteria. And look, it would probably be better if I did something like kimchi or something like that to just to keep the fermented stuff going in. but it's like, just get me, I didn't feel like eating kimchi and all this crap, right?
Mhm.
Just get me more vegetables to get in there with all this fat because I want to keep my gut health on point, right? And it's shown that, by eating some vegetables with all of your protein and fat, it helps do that, right?
Yeah, she seemed like her GI system was better, and once again, it was something else. It was like I feel like lots all of a sudden is being taken away from me. Like 50 grams of carbohydrates is not a large dose, so it's
Right.
like that one small fermented piece of sourdough she enjoyed. Well, that's gone. We drink a glass of wine once or twice a week. Well, that's gone.
Yeah.
Cheese and sour cream. Well, that's gone. So it was like, okay, what can we do? What do you enjoy? Okay, well, we don't need a ton of vegetables. Like maybe we can do some of that, mix it up. And so kind of like whatever, we didn't go out to eat at all for almost like 6 months, just because once again, you have a lot less control over doing that.
You have no control. They'll
Yeah,
throw seed oils and everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because talking with different providers, because we'd see, oncologists and surgeons, um, nobody, once again, no, certainly nobody brought it up. They gave us this one little stupid packet. I already shared, the oncologist said don't eat animal fat, but they gave us this stupid eat all things, whatever they handing out Ensure. Um, but it was just like, I asked one person, I said, hey, we're doing this. What do you think about this? And she just said, I just don't think people with cancer should have anything else, to do. Like you're already stressed out. Why would you want to do that? And I thought, like, what an incredible cognitive dissonance here. Like, look, this isn't once again something we made up, or there's one study on the internet. There's tons of studies on this. And you're in the most terrifying point of my life. Like I shared online that it was really hard. I would go to work and I would cry. You're scared, you're overwhelmed, you're trying to get a surgery schedule, trying to do all this other stuff. It felt empowering. It felt like this is the one thing we can do that has been clinically shown to have a better outcome. And like you said, we're not going to cure cancer. We're not trying to say eat a ketogenic diet and don't do other treatments, but we are saying when you use this as an adjunct, you have a statistically significant better results for many, many cancers.
And that's exactly what Thomas Seyfried would say. It's like, this is not a cure for cancer, but it's going to get you down the road. And I really take umbrage with every time the medical community has no idea what to say. They'll go, "Well, your life is tough enough. Go enjoy pizza and ice." They do that with type ones,
Yeah.
right? They'll go, "Well, your life sucks enough. You might as well just enjoy yourself and then just take this product, take more of this drug." You know,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, they they gave after her surgery. They gave us a care package. The hospital did, and it had a bunch of chocolate. It was like, oh my god! And we see that at this race for the cure or all these other places that are supposedly raising money for
right.
various cancers, and they're just you go to the end of the line and there's all this shitty food. It's like all this stuff that's fueling cancer. It's tremendous, and it makes me angry and frustrated and sad, but it also makes me once again just like I am grateful that I knew that we immediately knew. It wasn't like, oh my god, we got to the end of this process and we found out. It was like day one we knew. But I also thought of so many people who get this diagnosis. They're going to go online or they're going to go to their doctor and their doctor's going to tell them, gosh, it doesn't really matter, just eat healthy, eat in moderation, do what you can. And that's not helpful.
No, it's like they don't want to deal with it, And by the way, the same happens if I used to go to all these Susan B. Komen Foundation, walk for you know until your balls fall off for cancer walks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I would go in solidarity, for friends and family and everything else. My grandmother died of breast cancer way
Mhm.
back when they didn't know how to treat it, and so it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And when you go to these events, it's all, ice cream and donuts and everything else. And I'm like, we're out here, we're trying to walk to be healthy and to make money for you guys. And I get it. You want to support us, but with junk food,
Hmm.
again, it's the cognitive dissonance, it's the disconnect. Folks, we're talking to Michelle Hurn. We're going to be back in just a second, but for right now, I need to tell you guys that at nsngfoods.com, my company, well, we sell the ultra fat. That's something that Corene can actually use, the ultra fat, because it will keep you in dietary ketosis. That's only We have almond butter, and we have MCT oil in the form of coconut oil. There is no stevia. There's no bullshit. There's no monk fruit or allulose or any crap. It's a real food. We can't keep the stuff off on the shelves, but right now we have a big stock of it. So I'm offering you guys 15% off by putting in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. I've noticed a lot of customers who have subscriptions have gone in and just purchased large amounts of it, because think about it. I sell this stuff pretty close to the quick. I don't have a big markup. So 15% off is almost at my cost for the product. So go get it right now, nsngfoods.com. You want to get the ultra fat nut butter, and 15% off by putting my name in, VINNIE, no wimpy Y. We are talking to Michelle Hurn, registered dietitian. Yeah, we agree 1,000% on this. You know, just the craziness that goes on. Now, you said as soon as you found out, you jumped into research, right?
Yes.
What was the first thing you found? You know, of course, everybody says they go online, and I did, and I love these words. My research. My research means that my friend Adam Carolla once said to me, he goes, you know, anyone can Google themselves right.
Mhm.
Right? Like I could go on, just like you went on and said, oh, ketogenic diet is the way to go for cancer. If you put in vegan diet for cancer, you can get the same amount of. So, how did you do this research, and why did you decide what you found was correct? What made you know? And I'm asking this for a specific reason, because I know who you are. You're going to go do research. You're a smart woman. What did you have to do to get to the right stuff versus, you know, the first thing, some sponsored ad on Google that tells you, hey, this is the way to do it?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing this up, because I actually believe, if I'm going to have an argument towards something, like you said, if I if I'm coming on here and I'm saying, like, yeah, cancer is not is not just a genetic disease; it's a metabolic disease and should be treated as a metabolic disease. I believe that, if I'm going to come on here and say ketogenic diet is the way to go, I better understand the flip argument better than they can, right? I better understand, why would somebody say have a vegan diet? What, like, I need to understand their argument.
Right.
And same thing with the low fat diet. Like, and so I'm always looking for, I think we can get in trouble when we just like circle in on our one view. And of course, I certainly have bias towards that, because that's where my expertise is. That, like I said, I
Right.
had a listen to a conference. I had a, Miriam, who wrote Keto for Cancer. I knew her personally. So that's, obviously I was diving into that. But before it's like, okay, this is what we're doing, we got to make sure we're looking at all angles of that. And what I found, that none of the other ways of eating were really addressing, they weren't addressing it on a metabolic level. Meaning, like, a vegan diet was saying, like, you need these phytonutrients and these, all these things that are in the plant kingdom. And there's really no clinical studies showing that, plant materials prevent cancer outside of, like, in vitro, meaning like outside of a test tube. And the
Right.
human body is in a test tube. But we had very good clinical data that when we addressed it on a metabolic level, meaning utilizing macronutrients, they showed that, in the presence of ketones, cancer cells were not growing. In fact, in some cases, they were actually shrinking. And then, of course, you could argue, well, you could do a vegan ketogenic diet, I guess, but that's a rabbit hole we could go down, I guess, if you want to.
Good luck.
But, we certainly weren't interested in that for all the other reasons. I'm a big advocate of animal-based proteins for, creating neurotransmitters, B12, folate, zinc, all that other stuff. But the reason we specifically went ketogenic was because of that, looking at, if you're going to do a low fat diet, or, a higher carbohydrate diet, we knew it. Even the stupid Cancer Society says that it runs glycolysis at a very high rate. So you're basically throwing gasoline on the fire. And same thing, most vegan diets are very concentrated in carbohydrates. You're using rice and beans and God, what else they use? Quinoa and all those other things. So for us, looking at addressing it on a metabolic level, and I'm seeing more and more research of things even outside of cancer. Dr. Chris Palmer and Georgia Eid are showing that we can address, mental illness like Alzheimer's, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, by addressing metabolism. I'm seeing this in eating disorders. We address metabolism. We're seeing, major improvements in recovery. So for me, it also was just kind of another like, okay, we're seeing it with these other disorders. It makes sense. I've got all these clinical trials showing that this makes sense. This is what we're going to do. And we also knew that this was a very sustainable thing to do. The calorie restricted part, probably not sustainable,
Right.
once again, because she's not overweight, but at least for this short period of time, the goal was we're going to do that until after radiation. So for us, she got diagnosed December 20th and finished up with radiation at the beginning of April. So from that time, that's when she followed the diet.
Let's pretend you and me for a second. I just thought of this and it's like, wow, who better to do this with? Let's say, well, we're going to have two impossibilities. Number one, let's say you and I were married.
Okay.
And another possibility, let's say we were married and we were vegans. And we are vegans from day one. Like we are kumbaya, tree hugging, PETA loving vegans. I mean,
Attack you on Twitter, vegans.
we are patchouli oil vegans,
Okay.
right? We're all in. We don't know what a deodorant stick looks like. Vegans, right?
Okay.
You got a picture of who we are now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, pretty. We're pretty, aren't we?
Yes, we got dreads going.
Yeah, yeah, smelly as dreads, and somehow we smoke a lot of marijuana because that's what vegans. Hey man, it's vegan, right? So we learned that you have breast cancer since it's more common in women than men in our fake marriage. And we decide that we're going to put you on a ketogenic vegan diet because we decide that that's the best. I was just thinking through this when you were talking about it. It's like, okay, there's coconut oil, there's avocados, there's avocado oil, and olive oil, and maybe olives. What else can we eat? What else is on our diet? That's all I can come up with.
I mean, obviously, all the vegetables, but as far as like the oils,
But we got to stay ketogenic. I mean,
yeah, I mean, you could do like the broccolis, the leafy greens, but from a protein standpoint too, that becomes
yeah,
concerning, because you're eating just the lowest quality. Because a lot of vegans, it's like, well, I'm combining my beans and rice or my quinoa, whatever, and you can't do that. You can't have those carbohydrates. So, are you
right.
just supplementing with soy protein, which is not ideal?
Or hemp protein or pea
Yeah, I
protein.
guess
I
you
mean,
could do
that's
some
all you
hemp
have.
and pea.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Uh,
about all the proteins you got.
And
Um,
then you could do probably a little bit of nuts, but nuts you'd have to be careful. You'd have to test ketones because those also have carbohydrates.
well, there's pilly nuts. They're very high. You could probably also do macadamia nuts. So
Oh yeah, macadamia.
you got to be a rich hippie vegan to do that.
Oh yeah, no, it would not be cheap. It would not be, and I mean,
It's
this
certainly not
process in general
sustainable.
is
Yeah.
terrible, and unfortunately, when I worked in acute care, I had actually two people back to back that had breast cancer, and unfortunately, people do some crazy shit. We had one woman go to Mexico and have a shaman like cut her and put honey. Like people do some wild stuff,
I know.
and so with because it's scary, and there's not like clear cut information. Once again, no doctor. It's going to be very rare that an MD is going to tell you like, hey, look at this research for ketogenic diets. It's very safe and effective. I mean, they wouldn't even tell you that for obesity and weight loss. So yeah, as a vegan, it would be very difficult. But if you have a lot of money and maybe some help, I would anticipate it would be more difficult than if you were going to include animal products.
I saw, and this is getting off of our subject a little bit, but I saw the other day on my Instagram when I announced that my cancer was back. One person wrote, "Yeah, you don't have to do chemo. You can just do. They don't want you to know this, but all you have to do is take B17. Take a lot of B17." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I don't think B17 is a vitamin." I looked it up. Yeah, and he was calling it vitamin B17, right? B17 it's a compound, but it's made up of cyanide. And if you
Oh,
take too
wonderful.
much of it, you know what happens when you get a little too much cyanide. I don't know
Yeah.
if they taught you that over in dietitian school, but
Yeah.
you kill
Not
yourself.
ideal.
It's
Not
like,
ideal to
it's
die.
like, oh yeah, yeah. This is what they don't want you to know, right? They don't want you to know about this stuff because it would just kill their whole industry. It's crazy the things you hear out there when it comes to all of this with these shamans and people, doing kumbaya crap around you and the whole thing. There is some real things out there, and like I said, Otto Warburg had it right.
Mhm.
Thomas Seyfried is carrying that torch and gets yelled at every step of the way, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
I hear you though. They originally told Corene and I that after her surgery, she would need a full month, 20 sessions of radiation, and was super grateful. They got, once again, super clear margins. So she only had to do 5. And so that wasn't, once again, to me, that was a huge victory. So I posted that on my social media, and I had several people be like, radiation is bad, radiation is terrible, you shouldn't do radiation. One, no one likes unsolicited advice, yes. But two, it's like, you know what else is bad? Dying.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on social media and saying, wow, radiation is great. Everybody should be irradiated. Irradiation is toxic and terrible, but so is cancer.
But you know what?
You have to weigh these things.
You do, and the only pushback I could give you on that is that usually when people say that kind of thing, it's
Mhm.
because they lost their mother or
That's
sister or
fair.
someone, and they were radiated to death, right?
That's fair.
And they still died. Man, just being in a cancer center again, all the I would come back every time Serena was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm just fucking depressed, man," because you see people with no hair, with the thing
Mhm.
wrapped around their head and no eyebrows. And I walked in one day and I'm sitting there and there's a girl about the age of my daughter. My daughter's 27.
Mm.
And this girl is sitting and I'm going, motherfuck, man. Well, people always say to me, oh, you're an atheist and this. And it's like, come on. If there's a
Mhm.
God, please, kill me and take this kid, save this
Mhm.
kid. You know, it's just not fair.
It's not. No.
And so I get when people get angry and go, fuck radiation, fuck the doctors, fuck the cancer. Yeah, because they killed someone that they didn't kill him, but the choices probably led to some of that. But by and large, it's the best statistic you have, right? And what they have to look at is, yeah, Corene went through 5 when they want that. That's a quarter of what they wanted her to go through, right? They took me off of meds that were causing hives all over my body within a week, and I'm doing fine.
Mhm.
Now, I can't go out in public. I can't get on an airplane. I can't go anywhere because my neutrophils aren't where they need to be, and my white blood cells are in the toilet. I can't do anything. God forbid my dog licks my mouth. I can't do any of that. You know,
Yeah.
so you just have to be careful for a bit.
Yeah.
Is all.
Well, and I think most people, like you said, unfortunately, most people coming in, or a lot of people that get a cancer diagnosis, are not you or Corene or that young lady that are relatively healthy humans. Most people, I was sitting in there with her before her surgery, and the list of questions that they asked, I was like, my God, it was like, do you have type 2 diabetes? Do you have heart failure? Do you have congestive heart failure? Do you have kidney failure? It's like, no, no, no. And I asked the lady, I said, how many people that you see with cancer have type 2 diabetes? And she said, oh, at least 2/3, and it's a lot. So I think, unfortunately, there's so many other, comorbidities coming into that you can have that's why I think our healthcare system is trying to do so much of this other stuff versus like, man, if we could focus more on the metabolic side, if we could get people metabolically healthy before this, that would be great. But certainly even during this, if we can attack it as a metabolic disorder, we'd have much better outcomes.
You know, one of the, and I'm remembering this, I don't know if I mentioned it on any other podcast, but when I went in to meet with my new oncologist and I had to fill out all the stuff, right?
Mhm.
Um, the nurse came out and she goes, "Hey, you skipped a spot here." I said, "Yeah, what's that?" And she goes, "Your medications." And I went, "Oh no, I didn't skip it." She goes, "But there's no medications." And I went, "Yeah, I'm not on anything." She goes, "Nothing." I went, "No." And Yeah. And I can see what she was thinking. I'm 61 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see 61-year-olds that are not on anything.
No,
Right. It
in
just
my
doesn't.
time in healthcare, it's not uncommon for people to be on over a dozen medications.
Oh, I talk to people every day when I do the consults that are on anywhere from 9 to 12 medications, and three of them are usually GLP-1s. Three
Mm-hmm.
of them. And they're 400 and 500 pounds, and their triglycerides are 400 and 500 and 600. It's crazy what I talk to every day
Mm-hmm.
when I do the consults. So I get what they say. Wait, no Medicaid. You didn't skip this. You have no Medicaid. Yeah, and ironically, I'm the guy in here with cancer. So thank you. There is no rhyme or reason to any of it, right? But that's
Mm-hmm.
the world we live in. They don't expect healthy people to walk in with cancer, but here we are.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I agree. And I even think like whatever you were doing before this, the diagnosis is a game changer. You immediately, it would be my recommendation to shift to get into therapeutic ketosis, just because once again, that is going to potentially give you a better outcome. And for, like I said, for us, it was one of those things that you can control. You do feel like every night you go to bed and you're praying and crying, or if you don't pray, maybe you're just putting it out in there in the universe. I know I'm doing the best I possibly can to be
Yeah.
okay, to go into remission, to, you know, whatever else that you're doing. So it was a really hard and scary time, but it was so frustrating that like every step of the way, like nobody talked about it. Nobody mentioned it.
Folks, we're talking to Michelle Hurn. We're going to come back and find out exactly what happened to Corene. But first, I got to tell you guys about Villa Capelli olive oil, longest running sponsor of the show. You want to stay in dietary ketosis with ease. You want the best olive oil on the planet. Listen, there are other great olive oils out there. I can't go vet all of them. I vetted this company because they've been a sponsor of the show for over 11 years. Come on. Stephen Crutchfield and his then husband, Paul Capelli, started this incredible company in Italy. Paul passed away at some point, and Stephen picked up right where he left off, and we still get the great Villa Capelli olive oil. I know it's back in stock right now because I just put in an order for my own 3-liter 10. And by the way, folks, they don't give it to me for free. I have to do what you guys do, and I'm not shy. I put in the promo code Vinnie. I get my 10% off. As a matter of fact, I get two 3-liter 10s. That puts me way over the $120 mark after my Vinny discount. So I save double the amount there and I get free shipping. Villa Capelli, two ways to save free shipping if you spend more than $125 after the Vinny discount. Put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, no wimpy Y. Michelle, 6 months of living in hell, praying and crying every night. Here we are. Where are we now with the diagnosis? Any good news, bad news?
Yes. Yeah, no, good news. In complete remission. Yeah, now there's no cancer. They did a follow-up scan. Um, Everything looks fine. The surgery went really well. We actually, like I said, she had the surgery, and they'll take the tumor to pathology, and kind of depending on that, like they gave us a kind of what they thought they were going to have to do. Like, hey, you're going to have a full month of radiation. But after they saw the margins, it's like, oh no, you only need a few sessions. You can do this in a week. Um, and so that was super encouraging. And then followed up with her oncologist, and he said, I put this on my social media too. He said, my God, like we just don't see people heal this quickly. He said, it must be because you're young. And yeah, we are, like I said, we're 40.
Yeah.
We're certainly not 80 or 90, but it also was kind of like, well, we're also on a very anti-inflammatory diet. Like, we're eating in this very specific way to support the healing. And yeah, so yeah, she's doing great, so she'll be getting very frequent checks, at least yearly for the next several years. Her excuse me, her niece, her sister's daughter will be getting checked sooner because potential of the genetic component. But other than that, I mean, sometimes I'm so grateful. We had the best possible outcome for an absolutely horrific situation, right? You get this terrible diagnosis. You are able to immediately do the best you can from your side, getting on the therapeutic, calorie restricted ketogenic diet, getting into surgery and then a short course of radiation. And yeah, she's doing really well.
That's what I like to hear. And by the way, did you notice that whenever you mention to the doctor, hey, she's on a very anti-inflammatory, they don't care. They don't ask, right? They don't go,
Oh no, nobody said like, "Oh, Matt, wow, tell me more."
what are you doing?
Even she, I didn't say this, but she fasted before radiation too, and we asked, "Hey, is it okay if we get an early session? Can we make sure she comes in here early?" Because she also, she's very stubborn and driven, and she did not want to take time off work. And I get that. She was like, "Hey, I don't want to sit around and think about this, you know."
Right.
So, but it was like, well, if you're going to fast and ideally you don't, they could either do it at 8 a.m. or like 5 p.m. So it's like, can we have the 8 a.m.? And their response was just like, yeah, we'll see. And I said, hey, I get it, and I know you guys are slammed, but she's going to be fasting. So it'd be great. And then they're just like, yeah, we'll see. It wasn't like, oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Why are you fasting? It was just like, next.
Yeah, but look, I've often said they told me my cancer would be back in 5 or 6 years. You would have thought at 10 years, someone would have said, oh, wait, this guy's breaking some kind of record. And you would think at
Yeah.
15 years, they were going, oh, wait a minute. But to go 17 years, I went at least 11 years longer than they told me I would go before I needed like a touch up of chemo. And I'm like sitting there going, anyone interested? No one's interested. You know,
No, I mean, just like type 2 diabetes, unfortunately, it's just as I did more research and learned more about cancer and cancer treatments. It is such a moneymaker for healthcare and insurance companies because those things are astronomically expensive. That was actually after Corene said, I have cancer. And I, said the very brilliant thing of just, okay, like anyone needs me to write a speech. I mean, obviously I said it's going to be okay after that. But she said, this is going to be so expensive. And we have good health insurance, and I could have cared less. I could have said, well, mortgage the house, I don't care. But that's where we're at right now. And a lot of times, even in the US, I know when I worked in oncology, a lot of people wouldn't even seek treatment until much later because of the cost. And so now you have a super expensive system, zero dietary advice of anything. The dietary advice is eat whatever you want, eat sugar because you're sad, which is going to make it worse. They're
right.
going to get hit really heavy with some of the medications and chemotherapies and other things. And then you're likely to, depending on your current metabolic state, have poor healing and have other complications. So it's just the whole thing. And like you said, nobody said, wow, you healed really well. Tell me what you're doing.
They,
Are
they,
you doing
they
something
don't have
unique?
time. They don't have time to care. I'm telling you, look, the last time I went through this, it was kind of boutiquey because I was able to get in with this doctor that doesn't really see patients that got me on the chemo and did the whole thing. This time, and you mentioned these words here, you have a team,
Mhm.
right? They go, now, we have to consult the team, right? Once you're in the cancer thing, and now you're in the cancer thing, right? It's like you go into the hospital, you go here, you stop here, you do that, you go there, you give them this, you go here, and every day I would go in to get my infusions, and it was like, go here, stand there. It's that song, I feel like a number.
Mm,
That's exactly what's going on. Is they don't care about you or anything else. It's just I feel like a number.
mhm.
That's what it is. You know, and it drives me nuts. But that's that's the whole deal,
It's the
right?
reality. It's so much of it too is time. Like I felt often when we were there, they'd say, "Do you have any questions?" And I would start to ask a question, and it was kind of like, okay, like they were like, "All right, wrap it up." I got so many other people to see. You almost felt like, and I felt like this in a lot of healthcare settings. And having worked in healthcare, I know you have so many patients you're trying to see, so I know how crazy and terrible it is. But you start to feel like you're almost an inconvenience. Like here I am with this super scary situation with your partner. All this stuff's really sad. And so they're going to tell you, okay, here's what we're doing. See you later. It's
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm,
unfortunate.
I'm glad you guys made it through. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
It's always exciting to have you on. And yeah, is she still eating low carb? Obviously, she went back to low carb. Is she still in ketosis, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, she hasn't tested ketones in the last like month. I don't think it was really cool. She had like the chronometer app and the Keto Mojo and they talked to each other, and so it
Yeah.
was very easy to see. And Keto Mojo was super great to help us out with some extra of the strip thingies. But no, I mean, right now she's under 50 grams of carbs, but I don't know. I don't think I wish she was very excited to be able to include a little bit of fruit, a little bit of things, that she hadn't had.
Well, that's good. Please give her my best and know that you have a platform here whenever you want to come on.
I appreciate it.
Um, so thank you. You're working on something with Ken Barry and a couple of guys. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. So yeah, Ken approached me not too long ago and just said, how would you feel about working on something that is the opposite of the American Diabetes Association? And I was like, that sounds amazing because they're full of nonsense. This whole idea that we just eat a bunch of carbs and dose with insulin and high and lows and all that stuff. And then I didn't hear anything from him for a little bit, and then he came back and said, like, okay, I believe we can do this, and I've got a few people on the board. And here's the issue, though, is we don't have funding. Nobody's going to make any money. It's going to be purely volunteers. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, let's see what we got. So, but no, it's very exciting. So it's going to be me, Dr. Barry, Dr. Tony Hampton, Eric Westman, Ben Bickman, and another dietitian, Temple Stewart, who's also a ketogenic dietitian. And basically, what we want to do is we just want to create a website that's simple. I'm so
Right.
tired of going to you look at the American Diabetes Association, and they've got all these high carb, high sugar meals. They even say we don't endorse any diet, which is total nonsense because they talk about all, moderating carbs and eating carbs at every meal. And so we just want to have very easy, for providers as for patients, resources. Like, this is
Right.
how you can be low carb because you have a disease where your blood sugar is too high. So, like, not beating around the bush. We have no sponsors. We have especially no big food sponsors. So we can say what we want, and we're going to have some easy to follow recipes. We're going to have some articles. And so, yeah, what we're doing right now is just to get it off the ground. We're doing a fundraiser. So Ken's got the GoFundMe thing going, and we're about, gosh, I want to say not quite 3/4 the way there with our funding, but we're getting really close. So yeah, it's like when you get your health back, and when you have,
Right.
even when you have terrible things happen, like you had and my wife had, like, we have all these resources and we know these things and we've seen it help ourselves and other people. So it's right now we just want to give back, and we want to start something that we hope can kind of leave a legacy, can actually shift the paradigm with type 2 diabetes.
Well, good. I'm glad you guys are doing that. We need more of that. And look, it's always the same thing. I know when Nina Taisho started Nutrition Coalition and all that, it's all good and fine, but if there's no money behind it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Hmm.
Right. And that's generally the problem with most of this stuff. I tell people all the time, it's like, man, you make documentary after documentary. It's like, yeah, I'm still playing with the money from the first documentary.
I'm still in the poverty. I would be below the poverty line since I've left the hospital. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. You don't make a lot of money with documentaries or books or anything like that.
No, it's just crazy that we're out here and look, I can't cry poor. I've done quite well financially over the course of my life because I'm a businessman, but this is my passion,
Hmm.
right? And I do this for free. The podcast, I don't collect a dime. As a matter of fact, any of the money that comes in on the podcast goes to pay for the myriad of people who work for this podcast, and there's several: Leona, Debbie, Chris, um, Anna, Gina. There's at least 5 checks that go out because of this podcast, and I'm not one of them. You know, and that's why I always tell people, rate and review. Please go donate, do all the things.
Hmm.
Right? And when the documentaries, I'm still working off that first money I made. When the money comes back from the last documentary, then I make another documentary. It's the only way I can do it. If the money doesn't come back on the documentaries, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
done with the
hard. This is not an the
right.
nutrition business to be in. And like you said, you have to have funding. And that's why places like the American Diabetes Association or the Academy of Nutrition, which is like our governing board of dietitians, they have a lot of money, but they're taking that money from processed foods and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So then they're they have a responsibility to have their guidelines reflect those.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing that we're like obviously absolutely not going to do, because if we did that, then we wouldn't be able to give real accurate information.
The inmates are running the asylum. Folks,
Yes.
you know what to do. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com. Speaking of Amazon, not quite sure when the show is coming out because Leona's been on vacation in Europe.
Mm.
But maybe I'm paying her too much. I need to look at what I'm paying Leona. Whenever the show comes out, on the 30th of this month, my new documentary, Dirty Keto, will be dropped on Amazon. Please watch it. You can rent it for a couple of bucks. It's less than a half of a Starbucks run. Go rent it, watch it, review it so that other people can find it. That's the only way we do it here. Go check out everything Michelle Hurn is doing. She is on X as Michelle Hurn, and she and her wife Corene do these really funny videos. I chuckle every time. You will like them, and also you're on Instagram too, right?
Yes, at Run, Eat, Meet, Repeat.
Run, eat, meet, repeat. Yeah, that just rolls right off the tongue. So go check out everything Michelle is doing. Somehow this song came up in my brain when we were talking about the hospitals and how they run you through. Michelle, hang on because we have to let the show upload. So you got to listen to my stupid music for a couple of
I
seconds.
love it.
So on behalf of Michelle Hurn, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with Mr. Bob Seger.